Let's talk more NBA draft prospects. Edgecombe, Knueppel, it's all coming up. Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NBA fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd, and I'm never going to run around and desert you. I'm also the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Thank you also for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We are free. We are available on all platforms, so hit the thumbs and subscribes, and you're going to have a lot of draft content coming over the next few days. There's already been a lot. There's more coming. Hope you enjoy what we've got going. It is time for us to take a look on National Italian Beef Day. VJ Edgecombe, Kon Knueppel, a differing opinion on Derik Queen. It's all coming up, so we might as well just get straight into it. All right, so let's talk NBA draft. We're bringing in a man, you've probably seen his mock drafts and NBA draft stuff over on YouTube. It is Derek Parker. Derek, welcome to the show.
Thank you, man. I'm happy to be here. Talk a little draft today.
It's good to have you here. It's good to talk about some of these prospects. And I've actually spoken about one of the prospects that we're going to go into, because I asked all of the people coming on as draft analysts to give me guys that they're a little bit higher on, a little bit lower on. And literally the first player that we talked about on this series of shows was someone telling me they're higher on Derik Queen than consensus. Whereas you, on the other hand, you're sitting on the other end of that side, and you're a little bit lower on Derik Queen. And he is quite a divisive prospect, I would say. Literally, I think, because I don't really know how it all works on defense. Like, there is the offensive part of it that we can see those strengths, but the defense is going to be the concern, and can it stretch out in terms of shooting? How does that work? Are they the main sort of like issues that you're having here with valuing Queen in this upcoming draft?
Yeah, I think it's all, again, tied to the archetype. I think he's very much in this mold of Alperen, Şengün, Domantas, Sabonis, these high-feel, highly skilled bigs, but there's not a seamless fit in the modern NBA to me. So I think the athleticism is a little bit concerning. Obviously, the defensive fit, as you touched on, even the offense to some degree. Of course, he's highly skilled. He can do all these different things, but he can't stretch the floor great right now. And even on the interior, the NBA might present more challenges right now. So I'm just not a massive fan of the archetype in general. Now, all that to say, Derik Queen's great. I think he's really fun. I love a high field bet just in general, but I'm not high on this archetype. I think really the only time we've seen true success with this archetype in the recent NBA is Nikola Jokic, and he's obviously one of one, probably not attainable for a guy like Derik Queen. So I'm iffy. I'm going to end up lower on him than most. Again, super fun prospect, but that's kind of where I stand right now on Derik Queen.
When you say lower than most, like there'll be people, I saw someone talking about him, hey, he should be going in the top 3, or someone saying top 7, or there's lottery. I wouldn't bother in the top 20. I wouldn't bother in the top 10. Like, where are you at with him? So to me, when I originally, at the moment, I think I've got him about 14 or 15. And I think and this seems to be the case with a lot of the prospects here, like the guys that you put them with or the other foundational pieces on that team are important. So you're needing someone who can cover up defensively and work as a defensive stopper, a rim protector next to him. I had him 14 to San Antonio next to Victor Wembanyama. Like, that's important to me. Like, how low are you on him in comparison to where others may have him?
I think you hit the nail on the head. I think it's entirely up to fit. I think to be the best version of himself, he's going to have a rim protecting, 3-point shooting 5 playing alongside him. Now, he could potentially have that at 6 to the Wizards if Alex Sarr really comes around in those areas. But I think that's a bit rich for me. So you kind of go down the list here, and, Atlanta doesn't have these things. Chicago doesn't have these things. In my mind, he starts to slip. 14, as you touched on, again, hit it right on the head. That's probably where I start to consider him as a really viable, impactful option.
Yeah, he's an interesting sort of player because, again, he's one of those guys that can really put the numbers up in college and can look a certain way against that level of inferior opponent. But unless you are the outlier, unless you are a Nikola Jokic, that is harder to work in the NBA. Now, I've brought this up in a couple of shows, not necessarily about Queen, but in terms of his ability as a passer. Is he a passer who generates great looks or big assists through vision, through creativity, or is he a guy that generates assists through handoffs and being like this sort of a hub that's not really a creative hub, but more of a I'm here hub? Like, how do you view the passing and offensive creation around Queen that way?
Yeah, he's pretty versatile, to be honest. I think for now, the most impact collegiately comes in handoffs, DHOs, working from that more hub-esque spot. But he had some ambitious stuff in college in terms of really setting teammates up in the open floor, doing so in the half court, maybe more face up from beyond the arc. So I think if you have a team that gives him the time of day, gives him the rock enough, I think it's tenable that he could be a really good passer playmaker, even to the point of Sabonis, Şengün levels. Right now, it's maybe not the case, but again, it's going to depend on how much teams pour into him, how much they value him as like maybe a 1A, 1B, or even like a 2.
Would you say like there's guys that we can talk about as like, you're higher on or lower on, and there'll be things where you go, well, okay, I understand that makes a little bit of sense in terms of where they get picked. Like, how if someone was to take him in the top 5, would you say, ooh, that's a real disaster, or would you say I could see how it could get there? Like, what's your sort of limit of like, yeah, maybe, or like absolutely no way?
I'm just an optimistic like draft guy in general. So if someone swung on him at like 4 or 5, I'd be excited because I'd be thinking, what are they seeing that I'm missing personally? That's just like the viewpoint I have on it. Now, roster construction wise, I think anybody in the top 5 is probably a bad idea. I really doubt that happens. 6 to Washington makes a little bit of sense to me. Just again, like him and Sarr, there's a lot of feel, a lot of skill, positional versatility if you really do play him at the 4. So that makes sense. But yeah, again, I'm optimistic. Anybody taking him high would be fun. I hope the best for him. Again, I'm just lower on him than the consensus, probably relative to where people have him now.
I think we all hope for the best for these guys. We want everyone to hit their best outcomes, but it's in terms of, is it going to make sense and how does it fit with surrounding talent and team structure and all that sort of stuff is where we're trying to sort of analyze these guys. We're going to come back and talk about a guy that you're a little bit higher on than some others may be in just a sec. But today's episode, it is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. And with the NBA playoffs in full swing, the Eastern Conference and Western Conference finals are up and running. There's no better time to get in on the action, get all of those big shots and momentum shifters and can't miss moments through the playoffs. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live during the game. With player props and performance trends and same-game parlays, you have more ways than ever now to play smart and to win big. And you can see these players that show up in these big moments. You can check their player props. You can do that live in the game. You can combine them into those live same-game parlays as well. Plus, if it is your first time on FanDuel and you place a $5 bet and it wins, you get $200 in bonus bets. So if you are new on FanDuel, it is the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. And if it wins, you get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA, and don't forget to gamble responsibly. All right, Derek Parker, we are here to talk about some more of these prospects, and one of the guys that you are higher on than the consensus is a player from Duke, and there's so many of these guys from Duke who are going to go in the first round. I have been really intrigued in looking into preliminarily into this player and where he goes, and I could see a top 5 situation for Kon Knueppel outside of the absolutely horrendous mispronunciation that he has of his own name. He is this intriguing sort of a wing who has elite shooting numbers. He can pass a little bit. He's just the sort of guy to me, like he had 21 usage at Duke, obviously because he's playing alongside Cooper Flagg, but just fitting in at the 2, fitting in at the 3, passing, shooting, just doing the things that are needed to be done to sort of get a team over the line. Is he a guy that, like, again, 21.5 usage for a high-level prospect is not very high. It's not most guys coming in 26, 27 because they're the best player on their college team, and he wasn't, very clearly. Is he a player that he's almost certainly not going to be playing alongside Cooper Flag, but playing alongside other guys. But if he goes to a bad team, if he goes in the top 4, he might be the best player on the team. Can he take on the larger load? Can he be a self-creator? Can he be a offensive engine type? Or is he always going to be destined to be this sort of connective piece that works with other players and still needs another guy with him to handle that load? But when you've got those together, it works really well.
Yeah, I definitely lean the latter. I think connectivity is the name of the game with Kon Knueppel. Obviously, there's some creation juice. He's great in the pick and roll. His handle is good enough. He can putter around. He can finish efficiently at the rim. He can get into the mid-range and hit jumpers. There's some creation juice. But at the end of the day, I think he's going to project to be more of a 2, maybe even a 3 in terms of scoring load. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing to me. I think when you're thinking about him as a top 5 pick, sure, these teams up near the top that maybe don't have guys that don't have number 1 scoring options, are they going to want to swing on a guy like Kon Knueppel, whose ceiling maybe isn't as high as Trey Johnson, all these guys? No, but for teams that have that number 1 option, number 2 option, I think Kon Knueppel is just a walking positive. He's one of the highest field players in this class. He can get it done scoring-wise, on or off ball, connective passer, 2-to-1 assist-to-turnover ratio. He's just great. He's going to do the right things, as we saw at Duke, played the right way, helped them to the Final Four. Cooper Flag was great, obvious superstar, but Kon Knueppel was a huge part of the reason they were able to advance as far as they did too.
It makes an interesting thing because we're talking about this draft and the way that teams moved up in the draft. And, okay, the top 2 I'm pretty sure are settled, but Philadelphia's got Paul George. It has Tyrese Maxey. There's a high usage guard in Jared McCain. And, of course, there's Joel Embiid. And, at times you might say maybe there's a pretty big hole there on the wing. There's George, who's not always available. What happens? Who's playing at the 4? Is it outrageous that at pick number 3 he goes there? He doesn't have to be this high usage guy. He fits in with these other players. He shoots exceedingly well. He can take more on. He can pull back if he needs to. Like, is that too high, or does that fit to you on that team, which is a non-stereotypical lottery team or top 3 or top 5 team? Does it make sense that we could see Kon Knueppel like working as a guy going to Philadelphia at pick 3?
I think prior to the jump to number 3, I would have thought that was an impeccable fit. I would have loved that. Now, 3 is a bit rich for Kon Knueppel, just given that there will be teams looking to move up for the Edgecombes, the Ace Baileys of the world. So it probably doesn't make sense to stay pat and take Kon Knueppel. A trade down makes a ton of sense to me personally. I think Kon Knueppel could easily slot into a lineup. I think he could be a playoff positive impactor as early as next year. I really believe that. I think even in a few years, if the long-term outlook doesn't include Joel Embiid, I think Kon Knueppel next to Tyrese Maxey makes a lot of sense just in general. So I don't think the draft order, the lottery order necessarily shook out great for him because there's all these teams that have pieces, but now they're 1, 2, 3, which is probably just a bit rich for his range. And then you've got all these teams that need top pieces, but they're in his range at 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it didn't shake out great for him, but I'm excited to see where he goes.
The thing people are going to look at, and they're going to go, okay, 6'6", white guy who shoots extraordinarily high percentages from 3. His free throw percentage was off the charts as well. So the number one thing people are going to look at and go, yeah, but I'm sure he can't defend. Right? Can he defend?
He absolutely can. He's definitely in the mold of a more stingy, stocky defender than like racking up steals and blocks. There's obvious athletic limitations here, just in terms of both offense and defense, but he slides his feet. He cares a ton. And I know a lot of people write these things off when you get to the NBA and everybody can jump out of the gym, but he has like legit clairvoyance in jumping passing lanes. I want to say people on ball when he was defending shot like 29% overall. The numbers are absurd. He had like a 4 defensive box plus minus. He's better than people give him credit for in this area, certainly. And I think he'll, in the absolute least, be a wash in the NBA.
Yeah, that's always that problem again, because defense is a lot scheme dependent and who else is out there on the court with you. So he's playing alongside Cooper Flag, of course, which provides a level of protection behind you of like, okay, I know that Cooper's here and I can do some stuff that's a little bit different and it puts extra pressure on these players. So all of that stuff is context dependent. But the fact that we don't come in here straight away and saying, yeah, complete write-off and he's going to be hidden on defense, I think is a positive. Plus, the passing, plus the connectivity, plus the elite shooting, which we see a lot of these guys coming with this elite shooting, and in previous seasons there's been a lot of players and people are really quick to label this guy's the best shooter in the draft, and then it doesn't always come around. Like Grady Dick, for example, people were very clear on that. Or not people, a lot of people were. This guy's the best shooter in the draft. Hasn't happened, right? He hasn't been an elite level shooter. He hasn't been a high percentage shooter in the NBA. It might happen, but it hasn't. Would you say that Knueppel is, at least in the discussion, to be the best shooter coming into this draft?
I think he's certainly in the discussion. And the great part about that is that this is a great shooting class. Yep. Very genuinely. Trey Johnson is an absolute sniper. I think even the guys that don't project, or even the guys that didn't shoot great in college right now, project to shoot well in the NBA. And then you've got all these guys, Liam McNeely, Kon Knueppel, just a ton of guys in this class that can shoot the three ball. So to even be in the conversation is one thing. And to be at the top, probably one or two with Trey Johnson is great.
Let's go on to talking about a guy that you referenced earlier, a player that might be in that discussion again at pick 3 and pick number 4. We're talking VJ Edgecombe. Guard from Baylor. We've had a few Baylor guards go in the first round the last couple of years. Keontae George, Jacoby Walter in the last 2 seasons. Edgecombe is going to go higher than those guys. 24 usage. He's almost 20 years of age. He averaged, I guess his numbers won't really blow you away when you look at the numbers, like 16.5 points per 36 minutes. He shot 34% from 3. The one thing that will stand out, though, is the defensive, the steals. The 2.3 steals is huge. The idea with some of those previous players that I mentioned, George and Walter, is I hated the film on them. I hated the what I saw in terms of shot selection and like, guys, what is this percentage? Why are you taking these shots? What actually are you doing on offense half the time? And I'd say most of the time in the NBA so far, that sort of played out that way. Edgecombe's not really at that same extreme high usage, just bludgeoning your way to big numbers. He's quite a different prospect. So we'll start with the deficiencies here in terms of the offensive side of the game. What can he, 24 usage, again, not a super high number as a prospect. Can he be a high volume guy, or is he more of that actual legit 3-and-D guy who's going to work on that shooting, going to work on that, but never going to be an offensive primary number one, but he's going to work defensively. He's going to be that two-way guy. And the comparison that gets thrown around a lot is Victor Oladipo, of that sort of a player. And Oladipo did have those periods where he did spike to the high usage. How do you view the offensive usage and centricity around Edgecombe's game at the moment?
Yeah, I think that's the $1 million question. It's probably what's pushing him into number 3 talks at the moment. If NBA teams really think he can be that number 1 or 2 option offensively, then they're going to gamble on him there. And if they don't, there's a world where the handle doesn't come along. And like you said, he's more relegated to that 3-and-D, and they don't want to gamble on him. So to me, you touched on tape. I think the tape is huge with Edgecombe. Outside of the numbers, Jacoby Walter and Keontae George, like you said, bad shot selection, didn't always play the right way constantly. Edgecombe is gritty. He's nasty. He gets in the trenches, does everything right. Didn't have that high usage, but didn't necessarily need it to put up flashy-ish stats on a good Baylor team. Scott Drew's system is not historically one that's easy to thrive in. He did it. So to me, I think he has the pedigree. I think he has that boost of athleticism, which is going to be able to help him translate just easier in general. Always does with guys like this. So I lean somewhere in the middle ground, maybe a little bit more positively towards him being an actual scorer in this league, a guy who can fill it up.
So we look at the numbers here, 78 from the line is pretty good. It's not elite, it's pretty good, right? 34% from 3, it's below average, but it's not dreadful. It's okay. It's not 29%, but it's not 38%. So in terms of how he can develop into being a scorer, is it turning into a guy who takes 6 or 7 threes a game and hits 2.5? Or is it a guy that relentlessly attacks the rim? Or is it a guy that works through the mid-range or through drawing fouls? What's the thing that could actually propel him there? What do you have more confidence in, being an attack guy, being a mid-range guy, or being a three-point shooter?
I think the best thing about Edgecombe was his blend, honestly. I think he can score inside, middle, or from beyond the arc. I think he showed prowess in all 3 areas. Just given the athleticism, I probably lean most positively on the inside scoring. I think if the handle doesn't develop the way people want, maybe if the passing doesn't come around and he can't play in the point guard role, then I think that inside scoring, getting out in transition, spotting up, doing things like that is probably the easiest way for him to find initial success and then build from there. And then obviously the outside scoring, like you said, not perfect, but not bad. It got better as we went on. So I think there's a lot of tangible upside in VJ Edgecombe.
on the defensive side, like the steal numbers are really strong, and we've seen plenty of players come in from college to the NBA with high steal numbers. Doesn't mean they're going to be good defenders in the NBA, but it generally means they're going to have some success. Is he a legit defender? Are the steals real? Is he this pickpocket guy? Is he a passing lane guy, or is it just an athleticism thing that helped you generate those numbers? And maybe in the NBA he's not going to be as impactful defensively.
It's a little bit of everything. And the best part is that I think he can still refine his game a lot on the defensive end of the court. He's by no means a perfect defensive prospect, and he was still able to put up these stock numbers. He jumped passing lanes. Some of the blocks, if you just watch his blocks tape, are completely absurd. Like a 6'4" guard should not be making these types of plays. So it's a little bit of a combination. It's some IQ, putting himself in the right positions. It's the athleticism. It's a little bit of that extra length that he's got relative to like a point guard. He's a great defender. I think he's going to be a great defender in the NBA, just given his combination of everything.
That's interesting. Like you talk about the blocks, so my immediate brain just goes and goes, okay, Derik White, right? Derik White's offensive game does scale up, it scales down. He's very strong defensively. He's one of the best, if not the best guard shot blocker, along with Dwayne Wade and Danny Green in NBA history. Like, is that the sort of like mixed offensive two-way guy that you could see developing here with Edgecombe?
I like the general role and usage. I don't know that he has like the feel that Derik White has. Obviously, he can scale so well because of that feel for the game, because he can go up and play above his offensive limitations, or he could scale down into a role and be really, really impactful in that. I'm not sure Edgecombe has that same level of just feel for the game in general. It's inexplicable. It's unquantifiable. You just have to see it in tape. I'm not sure he has that, but the athleticism helps kind of bring that around. And then you can always develop things like this. You can always get better with your general basketball IQ. You can always get better. Just generally, I mean, you see it all the time. Players aren't drafted to be what they are, and then they skyrocket. Shea just won MVP, and he's a guy who came in as a two guard that people thought would play defense more than offense. So there's a huge potential for Edgecombe to get better, and I think he has a great baseline of skills.
We're going to come back and talk about another guy that might be in the conversation for maybe the best shooter in the class. We'll get into that in a second. As an older prospect, we're talking about, of course, Walter Clayton Jr., who, again, has that argument, I would say, to be in that discussion, much like with Kon Knueppel, to be the best shooter in the class. Now, he is an older prospect, clearly played for Florida, took them all the way in the NCAA tournament. 26 usage player, shot 39% from three, averaged 20 points a game, over 3 threes a game. Is this shooting real enough for it to make him as an older prospect like valuable to NBA teams?
100%. 100%. I mean, we're not talking about a guy that like blossomed late or anything. I think he shot and made like 800 or 900 3-pointers. So like, to me, the shooting is absolutely proven. He's a guy who he can do it on ball. He can do it off ball. He's got a lot of positional versatility in terms of being able to do it from the point guard position in the pick and roll actions, as a shooting guard in the open floor, contested. Absolutely a guy that is in those conversations as one of the best shooters in this class. And really, in the last few classes that I personally have evaluated, because last year wasn't a great shooting class. So it's been some time since we've seen a guy like Walter Clayton Jr. that can fill it up like this.
Yeah, that's a fair way of looking at it. He's such an interesting player because, again, we're talking older. We're talking a little bit on the smaller side as well, at about 6'3". What do you make of him in terms of his passing and his pick and roll skills, basically?
Yeah, I think he's a plus passer. I don't know that he's like full-time point guard ready. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing because, as I touched on, he's got this positional versatility. If you want to roll him out as the sixth man, I think that works. If you want to roll him out as a two guard next to a point guard, I think that works. If you want to start him at the two guard and let him shoot 8 threes a game, I think that works. So the passing is good enough to help him moonlight as all these different things, but I don't think it's probably to the level that NBA franchises want to roll him out as like your full-time one.
So, again, we're talking about an undersized guy here with elite shooting who's been playing in big moments, who runs as a point guard. There is value in this sort of a player clearly in the NBA. But I guess the question's always going to be with someone of this size is like, okay, how bad is he going to get cooked defensively, and is the trade-off worth it? So how do you view that?
I think it's worth it. Like you said, I think there's value in this archetype. In terms of guys like this, he's probably a little more athletic than the typical one. He's probably a little bit better defensively than the typical guys of this mold. He's got that it factor. Obviously led Florida to the championship as their best player, did it all in the final 2 games. I think he's got it, whatever it is. I lean a little more positively towards him than I do others of his caliber.
So I'll bring a name up who was a similar older prospect, a little bit smaller, shot the ball well on a really, really strong college team a few seasons ago. And I'm talking about Marcus Sasser, who has had a couple of moments in the NBA, but overall I think he's probably a little bit too small at times. Defensively he struggles, and the shot hasn't really come around. So how do you differentiate those sort of players? Or is that comparison between Sasser and Clayton off base?
I don't think it is, and it's tough because I was high on Sasser personally for a lot of these same reasons. I mean, he was a guy who saw enormous success with Houston, defensively projected to be probably even better than Walter Clayton Jr. was, but again, just looks a little bit too small, a little bit out of his depth with the Pistons. So I don't know. It's a tough differentiation. I think sometimes you just got to swing for the fences with these guys, maybe take that into consideration and move on.
I'll throw a name out just so we end on a positive in terms of comparisons. Like another guy that he compares favorably with through his numbers in college is Peyton Pritchard, who we saw struggle early in his career, but like obviously has flourished in the system that he's in Boston, and putting up gigantic numbers, and was a key part on the Celtics team this season. So that's you can go the Sasser route where it's like hasn't really developed, or you could turn into a Peyton Pritchard type, or that sort of a player who was an older player with elite shooting numbers. You worry about the defensive stuff, but it's worked out pretty well for Peyton Pritchard at this point. So there are always multiple angles that you can look at this stuff. The last guy I want to talk about is another of these older guards, and we're going to go to Tennessee, and we're going to talk Chaz Lanier, which honestly on the surface sounds like the whitest guy from Tennessee I've ever heard of in my life, but he is not. He is a 23-year-old guard, high usage guard from Tennessee, averaged almost 21 points per 36 minutes, shot 40% from 3. Again, another player who just elite volume of threes, unbelievable efficiency from 3. In the discussion, again, Derik, I guess, as the best shooter in this class. We'll start with a negative on this. We'll finish on a positive note. What's the drawback on Lanier?
Yeah, the drawback obviously is the fact that he's a little undersized for the 2 guard. He came back with better measurements than a lot of people thought at the combine. I believe just under 6'4" in shoes, and I think he has a 6'9" wingspan, which is great. That quelms everything that I have in terms of size with him. The main disconnect here is the inside scoring. Obviously, from outside, he is ridiculous. Again, similar numbers, I believe, to Walter Clayton Jr. And with Lanier, it's even better because his shot variety and versatility is bar none. I mean, he can do it in so many different ways. He can do it contested, uncontested, off screens, creating his own shot in some capacity, 1 dribble pull-ups, 2 dribble pull-ups. He can do everything from outside. It's can he finish inside? Can he get downhill often? When he does, can he actually score it at the rim? That's the big question.
Yeah, because you look at these numbers, 40% shooting from 3, but a true shooting of 56. Like, okay, that's like really low. Why is that number so low? Well, his free throws weren't that strong, and then overall just 43% from the field, which again goes to that he's not hitting his 2s at any sort of comparable level to that 3-point efficiency. Defensively, where is he at? Or is he just, in the role that he was in Tennessee, was that sort of more of an afterthought?
It was an afterthought, and it's a question mark coming into the NBA. Just how is he going to hold up? I think he did okay in the Tennessee system, but as everyone knows, as you know, the jump to the NBA is no joke. I mean, you're going to have a star on every single court. You're going to be staring at some of the best offensive players in the world. And if you can't hold your own, it's going to be a really rough time, and you're going to get picked on. So huge question mark for Lanier. Obviously great at a few things, a little bit bad in a few areas. So he's an interesting player.
So we've talked about a lot of shooters in this show. We've talked about Lanier. We've talked about Clayton. There's Kon Knueppel that we've spoken about as well. And to me, this is an overall sort of feeling about this draft class. Like you mentioned it, the shooting in this class is a lot stronger than previous years. But it also feels like this is a class that is very much like you want a guard, like here's a guard. Like there are guards whether they're point guards or combo guards or twos versus, hybrid forwards or versus impact big men. This feels like it's a draft where if you want guards, they are around for whatever sort of role, whatever sort of range of the draft that you want. Do you think that is, as a general totality of the draft, do you think that's an accurate way of looking at this group?
I think so. I have been pretty outspoken about liking this class in general. I feel like there was a little bit of an aftershock where Cooper Flagg is obviously 1, Harper's 2, and then the rest of the draft hemisphere has kind of tapered off and, it's okay outside of that. I'm really high on it. I think it's got something for everyone. If you want a guard, if you want a 1, a 2, it's got it. If you want combo wings and forwards, it's got it. It's got a few centers laying around that I think are going to have high NBA impact. I think it's a good draft. I think it's got something for every team that has a pick.
I think that I agree. I think there's always going to be reflex pushback. There's always going to be rebound pushback on people when you have a bad draft class followed by one's a good, and someone says, well, this is actually not that good, and these players aren't that good. And that's true. Everything's always going to fade down, and there is the impact of NIL on depth of classes and all that sort of stuff. But overall, this is a pretty strong draft class. There's a good spread of different players, and I like to see one of the things that it's a very inexact way of looking at it, but if I see a draft class with a bunch of guys and I have to question every one of their shooting, or I go, why is your free throw percentage this bad? I go, there's something a little bit off here. But when I see a bunch of high-level shooting prospects come in, a bunch of guys who've got fundamentals down pat with a lot of good passing players, whether it's in primary or secondary roles, that's where I really like, because it's the feel, it's fundamental things that translate across pretty well. And that's where I tend to like it. Like you said, last year, the shooting, everyone was like, I don't know about this guy, I don't know about this guy. The shooting's off, this is going to be bad. And it was, for the large part. And that's, to me, you never know how this stuff's going to work out in general. But I can say that, but I also think that for the last 5-6 years where I've been doing this more in depth, I think we have sort of known the overall strength of classes, and usually it is pretty spot on. So I'm pretty confident in how that stuff's going to work out. Derik, what have you got? First of all, tell us what your YouTube channel is and the other work that you do, and what's coming at the moment for you.
Yeah, so Derik Parker on YouTube. I have a lot of draft stuff coming up, scouting reports, mock drafts, as you touched on earlier. We'll have a big board here in a few weeks. I do one a year. I don't like big boards, but I got to do at least one so I can get my takes out and concretely push them into the universe. And then we do work at NBA Draft on SI, and then all the other SI sites. We've got Thunder, Rockets, Nets, all kinds of stuff. So yeah, you can find me on Twitter, DParkOK. That's the spots.
Whenever you look up NBA Draft, mock draft, you'll always see Derik's one pushing up there with huge numbers. They always pop off. They're always great mock drafts to take a look at. So go and check them out over there, Derik. Thank you again for coming on the show and chatting about these NBA Draft prospects.
100%. This was a blast.
And that will bring us to the end of another show. Derik was awesome. We talked about these draft prospects. I hope you're starting to get an idea of how this class looks and the types of players that are available. There are a lot of fantasy relevant players in this class from a dynasty perspective, from a redraft perspective, in comparison to previous years. Obviously, there's Cooper Flagg, but there is going to be more of these guys that get drafted in redraft leagues. The value of these players is a lot higher than it has been in previous years, and someone like a VJ Edgecombe actually translates as one of the better players, again, likely with that huge steal rate coming into the class, and Clayton as a nice option too in terms of fantasy translation numbers, which is something we'll touch on more when we get closer towards the NBA draft. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.